Hello and welcome, Marc-Elian Bégin from SixSq. I think you like to be called Meb. So Meb, could you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hi, Pierre. It's a pleasure to have this conversation with you. So yeah, I'm Marc-Elian Bégin. Indeed, people call me Meb, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of SixSq.
Okay, so welcome again to the program. Who is SixSq? What do you do?
Okay, so SixSq is a software company. We're based in Geneva, in beautiful Switzerland. We basically provide products and services in the field of edge computing.
All right. And what's the origin of the company? What expertise do you provide? What focus do you have? I want to know more. Tell us about SixSq.
So SixSq was created, actually incorporated in 2007. I was back then at CERN, European Lab for Particle Physics, actually just down the road from where I'm talking to you today in our offices. I discovered the cloud back then. I got really excited. Throughout my career, I've been focused and passionate about software. And so I brought the cloud to CERN, and in the process, basically created the idea that would lead into SixSq. So we created a company with my wife, Louise Merrifield, and a friend, and then we kicked off the company, focused on taking real advantage of that burgeoning technology, which was the cloud back then.
Help us understand your focus today.
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, we did for about 10 years played in the cloud space, right, to sort of democratize a pretty complicated and complex technology. And in 2018, we decided to really shift the company. So it was I qualify it as a double pivot, right, on edge computing with a value proposition that would be based on a SaaS, which was a precursor back then, so that we would deliver a platform in order to help customers build edge computing solutions. But as you alluded to, the edge is not in a vacuum. You cannot be at the edge of nothing, right? So you're always at the edge of something, and that something for me is the cloud. So often, and you'll see this on our website in our communication, it's edge to cloud. It's the two technologies work together. They're not antagonistic, right? They work together, and our vision is really to provide software that will help customers really put a cursor between the things at what ends, right? The IoT, right? The things, and the cloud, and all of its incarnation, public, private, hybrid, and so on. And then the space in between those two things, that's where the edge lives, right? And that's where we're focusing.
I saw in the news that you were recently acquired by a French company. What is that all about?
Yes. So as part of our pivot in 2018, we sort of rebuilt our value prop around Edge and the SaaS, the B2B SaaS platform that I mentioned. And then we basically decided to raise funds. And so we started that in end of 2020. And last year in October, we announced that actually we were joining the Ekinops group, which is, like you said, a French company listed on the Euronext stock market. But what is very interesting with this company is that they're providing to about a third of the largest service providers and telcos in the world, and in need of creating value at the edge. So our software was a very good fit for the company. So we're very happy with that, and in the process, it's funding and accelerating significantly our commercial scale.
So it's a truly global organization that provides you that global reach and global capability then?
Absolutely. I mean, there's, we now have 80 salespeople, providing a significant access to markets, and we're talking, it's a global presence in Europe, North America, Asia Pacific.
Some decisions are better taken where the information is, right? So help us understand, how does the edge help address that latency issue?
Well, the fact that you're able to take a decision close to that data means that you don't have round trips, right, back and forth to a distant location, which might be your data center or your cloud. So there's an obvious benefit there. So latency has always been sort of the first hope, right? When edge was coined, a few years ago, which would deliver great value. And it's true, there's undeniable, but there are other ones, right? Sovereignty, for example, we talked about data earlier. So the ability to really control where your data is, to remove any anonymize, for example, is a good thing, especially if you're dealing with audio or video. But autonomy, is perhaps, I would think, an even more powerful argument for edge rather than only latency. Because the reason why you don't want latency is because you want to have this autonomy, right? You want to be able to take local decisions quickly. And if the network fails or drops momentarily, then you're still able to deliver that business continuity. And that's really key in many, many business cases.
So tell us a little more about this.
Yeah, so one example is we're working with a well-known international um, organization that provides medical services around the world, and they operate in very difficult and sometimes conflict zones, right? So managing patient data is really really key. So they put a lot of rightly a lot of control and precision over how the data is processed. So the fact that it's processed locally, as available locally, is really important in order to um, stay within the legal framework of the countries they're working in. So that's one aspect. But more mundane at home, any video or audio recording equipment in the public space has GDPR constraints, whether it's in Europe, but you also have similar things in other countries. So sovereignty becomes that. But there's even an extension to this from having a fine control of your edge and cloud. You're able to, even when you move your data to the cloud, because you're controlling that process, you're able to also create, control the entire space where your data is moving around. So for example, even though we have our own platform that is in the cloud, our customers are able to do edge to cloud in their own perimeter, right? And so have a full sovereign strategy for their data, and that I think is becoming a very key argument to do edge computing, at least in the way we perceive the technology.
Security of the information, I presume, with anonymization and encryption is also something that you bring.
Absolutely. So there's a number of things on security, and we could probably have a conversation just on that. But perhaps the high level items will be the fact, if you anonymize your data, already your data is more robust, right? And even if it were to be, you know, um, um, captured, then it's less sensitive. So that's already a good thing. The fact that you have an edge infrastructure that is massively distributed, with now the ability to do local cyber defense, and that's one of the applications we've recently onboarded in the marketplace, means that although there are several places where you could attack, all of those locations are defended, and also you would only, even if you were successful, you'd only have a very small set of information. If you were to bring all of that, anonymized, not anonymized data into the cloud and successfully attack that, then it would be really damaging for the customer. So these are sort of different aspects that the an edge to cloud strategy brings in terms of security.
So we understand some of the use cases that are enabled at the edge. What's SixSq's contribution to all of this? What type of products do you bring to the market that enables those use cases to materialize?
Yeah, absolutely. So our answer to this is basically it's software. So it's two products that are working together. One is, we call it Nuvla. It's available on nuvla.io. It's a B2B SaaS platform. And it basically allows the users to, it's a multi-tenant, so users and organizations and partner organizations to work together to manage their edge and cloud infrastructure. And at the edge, we have another piece of software called Nuvla Edge, which is a small software that takes control, if you will, of the edge device, and then securely connects that to the Nuvla platform. Okay, so that from the Nuvla side, we see endpoints, so the devices that become smart edge devices if you want, where you can actually receive telemetry, so you understand what's going on in those devices, but you also can deploy applications over the air, right? And then do this in a very simple way. It takes a few seconds, one click and a few seconds to do that. And I always challenge our DevOps team to say, even if the device physically might be floating in the middle of the ocean, it needs to be, we need to provide a user experience for the developers and the administrators as if that device was on the desk, right? In terms of availability, because if you're at the top of a mountain soon in space, in the middle of the ocean, or embedded in your smart city infrastructure, accessing that hardware is difficult, right? So the software that needs to be designed, that we call Nuvla Edge, needs to have this um, difference in mind that edge computing brings, because we're not in a data center. We can't just access a server, pull it out and change a piece if something goes wrong or a piece of software that stops responding.
You have the ability to deploy applications on edge devices, which are small computers, I
Yeah,
presume, at the edge. And those applications then can be updated dynamically through the SixSq platform.
exactly. So basically, Nuvla Edge first. Yes, there's a lot of, in the case of far edge, when the edge device is close to the data or to the things in IoT, then often there are single board computers. Raspberry Pis is an example of an ARM-based single board computer, quite small. But you also have much larger systems. The European Space Agency, for example, is using a half rack full of very capable servers because they're processing a huge amount of data, and that works the same. So Nuvla Edge software, from that perspective, is agnostic in terms of hardware. Okay, and as long as the application is containerized, so we can talk about Docker technology and these things, then yes, indeed, any application can be materialized remotely in there, and you can have several. So if the capacity of your edge device allows it, then you could have several applications running in parallel. But you also have the ability to swap, right? You could have a set of apps during the day to do. In retail, for example, you're trying to understand customers. In the evening, you're doing security surveillance, for example. Maybe there's warehousing things or reshelving that's happening either in the evening or in the weekend. So you probably want to have a different set of applications. All of these things are possible with the platform, whether directly through the user interface or directly talking to the API behind, which of course is required in order to do these types of things.
All right. And SixSq develops its own applications that it deploys to the edge.
Yeah. So, well, yes and no, in a sense that we have created our own applications. Can talk about
I
the
think
black
I think
box.
you got one
Yeah,
called the
yeah,
black box.
yeah,
So
exactly.
I
Yeah,
was curious about that one.
yeah. The black box is well, if you look at if you analyze all of the sort of try to find a common denominator around all the sectors that we're targeting, right? There are three things that we regularly see. One is understanding the present, understanding the past, right, and predicting the future, which is probably the holy grail of many things, right? Predictive maintenance and so on is starting to make some ways in that direction, which is really interesting. So the idea there is, what kind of application can we create and provide in order to deliver value for customers across those sectors? And we realized that there was one case that was common to all of those, is basically understanding the past, and that's why we created an application called the Blackbox. The same thing as when an airplane crashes. Unfortunately, often the black box, that's the recorder, right, that contains all of the recent recording that will hopefully help a forensic team understand the cause of the crash. So we created an application called the black box, where it basically records everything that happens at the edge, okay, and the retention depends on the amount of storage that's available. And on trigger, something goes wrong or something is detected that shouldn't happen, or whatever. Then it creates what we call a virtual black box. So it takes all of the recent recording, which is potentially a lot of data, and then encrypts this, compresses it, and pushes it to the cloud, and then sends a notification. So it's a great way to have the ability to retrieve the raw data under specific conditions, where over time, if nothing off nominal happens, it's on a conveyor belt, right? So the old data gets chucked out as new data comes in, and everything is fine, right? So it's a generic way to provide a little time capsule, if you want, for the edge. But otherwise, as you were alluding to, we have no pretension in understanding all of the sectors and the verticals that are out there, which is why we created a marketplace,
Mm.
in order to create a space where app vendors can actually register their application and even sell their applications on the platform.
You have your own applications, but you're also making your platform open for independent software vendors, ISVs,
Yes.
to also distribute but monetize their
Yeah,
applications.
absolutely. So in our philosophy, we use a lot of open source software. We contribute quite a bit of open source software as well. So it was always clear that we'd create an open system. We've been trying to also stay very close and honest to the standards that we're using, whether they're de facto industrial standards like Docker or Kubernetes, or real standardized standards, and so on. So it was only normal to create a service that could be used by others. And then this takes a few different forms. You discuss the fact that yes, app vendors can register their application, publish their application in the platform, associate a license to protect their IP and a price, so that actually it can be monetized. And then we will basically, when we receive funds from customers that will purchase and deploy those applications, then we basically pay the vendors. And to organize this process, this is why we are announced earlier this year the app vendor program.
I know you're having quite some success, at least from the discussion we were having earlier, with some service providers. Can you tell us a little more of what is particularly interesting for those customers in dealing with SixSq and the value that SixSq brings to those service providers and telcos?
Absolutely. So the telco and the service providers are challenged in many ways, but one of them is they're sort of being pushed or reduced to only provide connectivity services, right? Because these are the things that the hyperscalers don't want to do typically. So in our discussions with them, we soon realized that um, they could provide way more, right? And this is where working with telcos and service providers that are providing, for example, universal customer premise equipment, UCPs, then we're able to, by enabling that as an edge device with the Nuvla Edge software and the Nuvla platform, then they can actually first extend their monitoring to the enterprise, their customer enterprise and infrastructure, so provide a much better service, right? But then, because they're already there, then the marketplace is providing a great mechanism for them to enable passive software-defined recurring revenue, right? And so this is becoming sort of the next step for service providers and telcos to say, okay, now we're able to provide better, point to point, connectivity, and we're able to monitor and measure and enforce this through some of our software. But now we're able to start delivering business applications through the marketplace.
So, a company that's thinking about how can I take advantage of the edge for my business, what would be your tips or recommendations?
So the first tip is don't do it alone, right? Do it yourself is risky, right? We see a lot of failure cases in organizations that try to do it themselves. Um, so the first thing is start small, okay? Start specific, and celebrate the success of this, and then grow that. And this is why, for example, we really like workshops. We like to engage in a structured manner with our customers to define what a first success would look like. What is that use case, and how can we demonstrate its value through a proof of concept or a pilot, such that we're able, if successful, we can already engage in a long-term business relationship, which will then start to grow in relevance and importance for the customer. But don't do it here on your own. Seek out expertise. Smart, start small, and incrementally add value would be the nutshell of how to start with, hopefully, getting great success.
Meb, CEO of SixSq, thank you very much.
You're very welcome, Pierre. Thank you.